Jamal Carter, a 21-year-old black young man, stopped for gas on his way home from college. A routine stop. But to Officer Ryan Webb, he saw a criminal, a car thief, an expensive car that didn't belong. What Webb did next would shake the entire community to its core. The evening air was cool, peaceful. Jamal pulled his Honda Accord into the Shell station on Route 7. The gas light had been on for the last 5 miles. He'd been studying late at the university library. Finals week, engineering exams. His mind was full of equations and formulas. He stepped out, stretched his legs. The drive from campus took 40 minutes. Almost home now. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. "Drive safe. See you soon." Jamal smiled. His dad, always checking in, always protective. Special Agent Michael Carter, 23 years with the FBI, a man who dedicated his life to justice, to fairness, to the law. Jamal had grown up watching his father fight for what was right, investigating corruption, civil rights violations, hate crimes. His dad had taught him important lessons. Stay calm, stay respectful. Know your rights. But also, the world isn't always fair. Some people carry prejudice in their hearts, and sometimes that prejudice wears a badge. Jamal inserted his credit card, selected regular unleaded. The pump clicked and hummed as fuel flowed. He leaned against the car, pulled out his phone, scrolled through messages from classmates, study group plans, weekend plans, normal college kid stuff. The patrol car pulled in slowly. Jamal noticed it from the corner of his eye, but didn't think much of it. Police stopped for gas, too. Nothing unusual. But Officer Ryan Webb wasn't there for gas. He was there because he'd noticed the car. A nice car. Too nice, in his opinion, for a young black man to be driving. Webb had been on the force for 8 years, had a reputation. Some called him thorough. Others called him something else. Biased, aggressive, quick to assume. He'd had complaints before. 3 formal ones, all dismissed, all explained away. But the pattern was there, if anyone cared to look. Webb approached, his hand resting on his belt, near his weapon. "Evening," he said. But it wasn't friendly, it was suspicious. Jamal looked up. "Evening, officer. That your car?" "Yes, sir." Jamal kept his voice even, polite. "Registration and license." Jamal's stomach tightened. He hadn't been pulled over. He was just getting gas. But he knew better than to argue. "They're in the car. Can I reach for them?" "Slowly." Jamal opened the passenger door, retrieved his wallet and the registration from the glove box, handed them over. Webb examined them, took his time, looking for something. Anything. "Jamal Carter," he read aloud. "This address current?" "Yes, sir." "And this is your car? Not stolen?" The question hit like a slap. "It's my car. My parents helped me buy it when I got into college." "College?" Webb's tone was mocking. "What college?" "State University. I'm studying engineering." "Engineering?" Another smirk. "Fancy." Jamal said nothing, just waited, hoping this would end soon. Webb walked around the car, peered in the windows. "You been drinking tonight?" "No, sir. I was studying. At the library." "Studying? Right." Webb didn't believe him. You could hear it in his voice. "Step away from the vehicle." "Why? I haven't done anything wrong." "Step away from the vehicle, now." Jamal's hands trembled slightly, but he complied, moved away from the car, standing under the harsh fluorescent lights of the gas station. Other customers watched, some uncomfortable, some curious, none intervening. "I'm going to search your vehicle," Webb announced. "Do you have probable cause?" Jamal asked, his father's training kicking in. Webb's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart with me, kid. I don't need probable cause. I've got reasonable suspicion." "Reasonable suspicion of what?" "That's what I'm about to find out." Jamal took a deep breath. "Stay calm. Don't escalate." "Officer, with all respect, I know my rights. You need reasonable suspicion of a specific crime, not just a feeling." Webb stepped closer, intimidating. "You a lawyer now?" "No, sir. Just a citizen. Who knows the law?" For a moment, Webb seemed to reconsider. The kid was right. He didn't have grounds. Not really. And if this went sideways, if there was a complaint, but then pride took over, he wasn't going to be lectured by some college kid. Especially not one who thought he was smarter than him. Turn around, hands behind your back. What? Why? You're under arrest for obstruction. Obstruction? Jamal's voice rose, disbelief mixing with fear. I haven't obstructed anything. Resisting and obstructing an officer. Turn around. I'm not resisting. I'm just asking questions. Webb grabbed Jamal's arm. Rough, forceful, spun him around. The handcuffs clicked on, cold metal biting into his wrists. Tight, too tight. Jamal's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. He'd done nothing wrong. Nothing. Just stopped for gas. Just existed. You're hurting me, he said quietly. Webb ignored him, led him toward the patrol car. A woman at pump 3 pulled out her phone, started recording. Ma'am, put that away, Webb barked. I have a right to film, she said, her voice shaking but determined. This is police business. This is a public place, and I'm recording. Webb's jaw clenched, but he couldn't stop her. Not legally. He shoved Jamal into the back seat, slammed the door. Jamal sat there, hands cuffed behind him. The position was painful, humiliating, degrading. He could see people watching, staring, some with pity, some with judgment. What were they thinking? That he must have done something, must be guilty of something. Otherwise, why would he be in handcuffs? That's how it works. The badge gives credibility. The uniform suggests righteousness. And the person in cuffs, they must deserve it, even when they don't. Webb returned to Jamal's car, searched it anyway, opened every door, every compartment, the trunk, the glove box, looking for drugs, weapons, anything. He found textbooks, engineering materials, a graphing calculator, notebooks filled with equations, a half-empty water bottle, granola bars, nothing illegal, nothing suspicious, just the belongings of a college student. But Webb wasn't about to admit he was wrong, wasn't about to let this kid go. Not after he'd already made the arrest. Pride wouldn't allow it. He radioed dispatch. I've got a subject in custody, bringing him in for processing. The dispatcher responded. What's the charge? Webb paused. Obstruction and disorderly conduct. In the back seat, Jamal closed his eyes, fought back tears. Not because he was scared, but because he was angry, frustrated, exhausted, tired of being judged, profiled, treated like a criminal for the color of his skin. He'd worked so hard, studied so hard, stayed out of trouble, did everything right, and still, here he was in handcuffs, for getting gas. The holding cell was cold, gray, sterile. Jamal sat on a metal bench, still in handcuffs. They'd removed them briefly to process him, take fingerprints, a mugshot, like a criminal, then put them back on. He'd asked for his phone call. They said they'd get to it. That was an hour ago. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, constant, annoying. He thought about his parents. His father would be worried by now. Jamal always texted when he got home. Always. And his mother. She'd be pacing, calling his phone, getting voicemail. They'd be worried, scared, and he couldn't tell them he was okay. Couldn't tell them anything. The injustice of it burned, hot and bitter. He'd done nothing wrong, nothing. But here he sat, treated like he had. The door opened. A female officer entered, Sergeant Lisa Martinez. She looked at him with different eyes than Webb, questioning eyes, concerned eyes. Jamal Carter? She asked. Yes, ma'am. I've reviewed Officer Webb's report. She paused. Can you tell me what happened? In your own words? Finally, someone willing to listen. Jamal told her. Everything. The gas station, the questions, the search, the arrest. Martinez listened, really listened, and with each sentence, her expression grew more troubled. Did you refuse to comply with any lawful order? She asked. No, ma'am, I asked about my rights, but I complied with everything. Did you make any threats? No, ma'am. Raise your voice? Use profanity? No, ma'am. Martinez nodded slowly. Wait here. As if he had a choice. 20 minutes later, the station doors opened. Special Agent Michael Carter walked in. He was still in his work clothes. FBI windbreaker. Badge visible on his belt. He'd been in a meeting when Jamal's roommate called. The roommate had tried Jamal's phone. No answer. Called the Carter house. Mrs. Carter didn't know where Jamal was either. Something was wrong. Michael made calls, used his connections, found out his son had been arrested at a gas station for obstruction. His son, who'd never been in trouble, who was studying engineering, who volunteered at youth centers, who was everything a parent could hope for, arrested for obstruction. The desk sergeant looked up as Michael approached, saw the FBI badge, straightened immediately. I'm Special Agent Michael Carter. You're holding my son. Jamal Carter. The sergeant's face paled slightly. Sir, let me get the watch commander. You do that. Michael's voice was calm, but underneath, a father's rage simmered, controlled, focused, dangerous. Captain Hernandez appeared, a veteran officer, 25 years on the force. He recognized Michael. They'd worked together before, Joint Task Force on Gang Violence. Michael, he said carefully, I heard. I'm reviewing the situation now. Where is my son? In holding. He's unharmed. Unharmed? Michael's voice dropped lower. He was handcuffed, arrested, for getting gas. How is that unharmed? I understand you're upset. Upset? Michael stepped closer, not threatening, but unmovable. My son, a college student with no criminal record, was arrested for obstruction at a gas station, where the only thing he was doing was buying fuel. Hernandez nodded. I've pulled the body camera footage and the recording from the citizen at the scene. And I'm concerned, very concerned. Show me. They went to a review room, pulled up the footage. Michael watched, silent, his jaw clenching tighter with each passing second. He saw Webb approach his son, saw the suspicion, the assumptions, heard the questions, the tone, the disrespect. Watched his son stay calm. Polite, cooperative, and still. Still. Webb arrested him for nothing, for existing while black. When the video ended, Michael spoke. How many times has this happened? Sir, where is my son? In holding. He's unharmed. Unharmed? Michael's voice dropped lower. He was handcuffed, arrested, for getting gas. How is that unharmed? I understand you're upset. Upset? Michael stepped closer, not threatening, but unmovable. My son, a college student with no criminal record, was arrested for obstruction at a gas station, where the only thing he was doing was buying fuel. Hernandez nodded. I've pulled the body camera footage and the recording from the citizen at the scene. And I'm concerned, very concerned. Show me. They went to a review room, pulled up the footage. Michael watched, silent, his jaw clenching tighter with each passing second. He saw Webb approach his son, saw the suspicion, the assumptions, heard the questions, the tone, the disrespect. Watched his son stay calm. Polite, cooperative, and still. Still. Webb arrested him for nothing, for existing while black. When the video ended, Michael spoke. How many times has this happened? Sir? Hernandez took a deep breath. Wait here. He left, returned 10 minutes later with Jamal. Father and son locked eyes. Michael pulled Jamal into a tight embrace. Are you okay? He asked quietly. Jamal nodded, but his eyes told a different story. Hurt, trauma, violation. Did they hurt you? The handcuffs were tight, but I'm okay. Michael examined his son's wrists, red marks, bruises forming. He took photos with his phone. Evidence. Then he turned back to Hernandez. Where's Webb? In the break room. I want to see him. Michael, that's not a good idea. I'm not asking. They walked to the break room. Webb sat there, coffee in hand, casual, as if nothing was wrong. He looked up, saw Michael, the FBI badge, and his face changed. Confusion, then recognition, then fear. Officer Webb, Michael said, voice deadly calm. Do you know who I am? Webb stood, stammered. You're FBI. I'm FBI, and I'm Jamal Carter's father. The color drained from Webb's face. The young man you arrested tonight for obstruction, for the crime of getting gas while black. That's my son. Webb opened his mouth, closed it. No words came. I've seen the footage, Michael continued. All of it. You had no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion. You stopped him because he's a young black man in a nice car. You arrested him because your ego couldn't handle him knowing his rights. You were just what? Doing your job? Is your job to harass innocent citizens? To violate their civil rights? To abuse your authority? Silence. I'm going to make sure this never happens again, Michael said quietly. Not to my son, not to anyone else's son. You're done. What happened next would shake the entire police department. In the car ride home, silence hung heavy. Jamal stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass by. They felt different now, less safe, less welcoming. Michael gripped the steering wheel, processing his own emotions, anger, fear, guilt. He'd spent his entire career fighting for justice, investigating civil rights violations, putting bad cops in prison, and still, his own son wasn't safe. If it could happen to Jamal, with all his advantages, his education, his upbringing, his father's position, then who was safe? Dad, Jamal said finally, I did everything you taught me. I stayed calm. I was respectful. I complied. I know. It wasn't enough. Those words broke Michael's heart. No, it wasn't. So what do I do? How do I stay safe? If doing everything right isn't enough. Michael pulled into their driveway, turned off the engine, sat in the darkness. You fight, he said finally. You document. You report. You demand accountability. You refuse to let them win. But what if they do win? What if nothing changes? Then we make it change. We don't give up. We don't accept it. We fight harder. Jamal nodded slowly. I want to file a complaint, an official one. Pride swelled in Michael's chest. We'll do more than that. We'll make sure this leads to real change. The FBI opened a federal civil rights investigation, not because Michael asked, but because the facts warranted it. Webb's record was examined thoroughly. What they found was damning. In 8 years, Webb had stopped or detained black citizens at a rate 3 times higher than the demographic breakdown of his patrol area. He'd filed 47 obstruction charges, 39 of them against people of color. 31 of those charges were later dropped or dismissed. The pattern was undeniable, systematic, ongoing, but it went deeper. Internal complaints had been filed, 7 of them, over the years, all dismissed, all explained away, all buried. The department had known, or should have known, and did nothing. When the investigation became public, the community responded. Town halls were held, packed with citizens, sharing their stories. A grandmother stopped while walking her dog, questioned about where she lived in her own neighborhood. A business owner, repeatedly harassed, despite owning the building he worked in. A high school teacher, pulled over 6 times in 1 year, never ticketed, just stopped, questioned, humiliated, story after story, pattern after pattern. The local news covered it, then national news picked it up. FBI investigation exposes pattern of racial profiling in local police department. The headlines wrote themselves. Jamal gave an interview, calm, articulate, powerful. This isn't just about me, he told the reporter. It's about every person who's been profiled, judged, treated as less than because of how they look. It's about the grandmother, the teacher, the business owner, All the people who don't have an FBI agent for a father, who suffer in silence, because they think no one will believe them, no one will help them. The interviewer asked, "What do you want to see happen?" Real change, not just punishment for one officer, but systematic reform, training, accountability, oversight, so this never happens to anyone else. The video went viral. 3 million views in 2 days. Comments poured in. Messages of support, shared experiences, calls for justice. The pressure mounted. On the department, on the city, on elected officials. They could no longer ignore it. Could no longer sweep it under the rug. The disciplinary hearing was held 3 weeks later. The room was packed. Media, community members, civil rights advocates, police union representatives, all there, all watching. Evidence was presented. Body camera footage, the citizens' recording, Webb's history, statistical analysis showing the pattern. Witnesses testified. Sergeant Martinez, who'd questioned the arrest from the beginning. "In my 20 years on the force, I've never seen such a clear case of arrest without cause. Mr. Carter was cooperative, polite. He committed no crime. The arrest was unjustified." The woman from the gas station, who'd recorded the incident. "I watched the whole thing. That young man did nothing wrong. Nothing. The officer was looking for a reason, any reason, to justify what he'd already decided to do." Jamal testified. He described the fear, the humiliation, the violation of being treated like a criminal for existing. "I've worked hard my entire life," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "I've stayed out of trouble, studied, volunteered, done everything society tells you to do. And still, I was arrested for getting gas." He paused. "But the worst part isn't what happened to me. It's knowing how many others this happened to. People who didn't fight back, didn't speak up, because they were afraid, or because they thought no one would believe them. I have a platform now, because of my father's position, because of media attention. But what about the people who don't? Who speaks for them?" Standing ovation. Even some officers in the back, the good ones, who knew this was necessary, who knew their profession needed this reckoning. Webb's attorney tried to defend him, argued he was following protocol, making judgment calls, doing his job. But the evidence was overwhelming. The review board deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the room fell silent. "Officer Ryan Webb," the board chairman began, "after careful review of all evidence, including your conduct on the night in question, and the pattern of behavior documented over your 8 years of service, this board finds you guilty of racial profiling, abuse of authority, and violation of civil rights." Webb sat motionless, his career flashing before his eyes. "You are hereby terminated from the police force, effective immediately. Furthermore, we are recommending criminal charges for civil rights violations under federal law." The room erupted. Applause, some tears, some shouting. Michael squeezed Jamal's shoulder, pride and relief flooding through him. But the chairman wasn't finished. "Additionally, this board recognizes that Officer Webb's actions were not isolated, that complaints were filed and ignored, that warning signs were dismissed, that systematic failures allowed this pattern to continue." He looked directly at the department leadership. "Therefore, we are recommending a full audit of all arrest records from the past 5 years. Mandatory bias training for all officers, implementation of early warning systems to identify problematic patterns, and the creation of a civilian oversight board with real authority." More applause, real change. Not just words, action after the hearing. Reporters surrounded Jamal and Michael. Jamal spoke. "Today is about accountability, about justice, but it's also about hope. Hope that we can do better, be better, create a world where everyone, regardless of skin color, can get gas, or walk home, or drive their car, without fear." A reporter asked, "Do you forgive Officer Webb?" Jamal considered the question. "Forgiveness is personal. Justice is public. What he did was wrong, and he's facing consequences. That's justice. Whether I forgive him, that's between me and my conscience. But I won't let what he did define me, or destroy my faith in the possibility of change. Michael added, as an FBI agent, I've investigated countless civil rights cases. I've seen the worst of humanity, the hate, the prejudice, the cruelty. But I've also seen the best, the courage of people who speak up, who demand better, who refuse to accept injustice. He looked at his son. My son showed that courage, and because he did, real change is happening. That's the power of standing up, of speaking truth, of refusing to be silent. 6 months later, Jamal stood at the podium in the university auditorium, guest speaker for the Criminal Justice Reform Symposium. He told his story, but more importantly, he talked about change. The department had implemented every recommended reform. Bias training was mandatory. Early warning systems were in place. The Civilian Oversight Board was active and effective. Complaints of racial profiling had dropped by 72%. Not because people stopped complaining, but because the behavior stopped. Officers who showed patterns of bias were identified early, retrained or removed. The culture was changing, slowly but surely. Ryan Webb? He faced federal charges, pleaded guilty to civil rights violations, received probation and community service, would never wear a badge again. But more than that, he became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when prejudice meets power. Jamal returned to his studies, graduated with honors, accepted into MIT's graduate program for engineering. But he also started a nonprofit, supporting young people who'd experienced discrimination, providing legal resources, advocacy, support, turning his pain into purpose. Michael watched his son speak, listened to the strength in his voice, the conviction, the hope. His son had taken the worst moment of his life and transformed it into a movement. That wasn't just survival, that was victory. After the symposium, a young woman approached Jamal, college student, nervous. Thank you, she said quietly, for speaking up, for fighting. Last month, I was stopped, profiled, but because of the new oversight board, because of the changes you helped create, the officer was held accountable. Your courage gave me courage. Jamal felt tears sting his eyes. This was why it mattered. Keep speaking up, he told her. Keep demanding better. Together, we can change this. She nodded. I will. Because of you. I will. That evening, Jamal and Michael sat on their back porch, watching the sunset. You proud of me, Dad? Jamal asked. Michael looked at his son, this remarkable young man, who'd faced injustice, and responded with grace and strength. Proud doesn't begin to cover it, he said. You changed a system. You gave people hope. You turned pain into purpose. That's not just admirable. That's extraordinary. They sat in comfortable silence. Father and son, both fighters for justice, each in their own way. The fight wasn't over. Prejudice still existed. Discrimination still happened. But because of people like Jamal, because of those who refused to stay silent, who demanded accountability, who fought for change, the world was getting better, slowly, one case at a time, one voice at a time, one victory at a time. And that was hope. Jamal's story reminds us that injustice doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care about your education, your background, your father's job title. But it also reminds us that change is possible when we speak up, when we demand accountability, when we refuse to accept that this is just how things are. If this story moved you, if you've experienced similar injustice, or know someone who has, the next video continues this conversation. Watch it. Learn more about your rights, about reform efforts, about how you can make a difference, and leave a comment below. Share your story, your thoughts, your hope for a better tomorrow. Because change doesn't start with one person. It starts with all of us, together.